Whatever. So I was just watching this documentary about fungi, and it's pretty cool. They're talking about like fungi was really probably the first multicellular organism to come on land. Kind of just literally like breaking down raw mineral like rock and turning it into like dirt, and then kind of forming symbiotic relationships with like algae and other like primitive green you know organisms that do photosynthesis and stuff, because they produce sugars and stuff, and that kind of brought them on land, which is what gave rise to you know the bigger plants we see today, entire forests and stuff like that. And now they still like have these networks where they share nutrients underground. They call it the wood wide web, and so they're kind of like regulating the whole uh, movement, the kind of forest structure, whatever you want to call it. But I always see the same thing in like these biology documentaries and stuff like that. And like everybody's always talking about evolution, and they always say the same thing. Like people, I really like. I think it's a very simple concept, and I'm pretty sure somebody's understood it by now. So I don't think it's some novel idea. But I always hear people say that like this and this trait came about because, as if these organisms have some like ability to like choose what type of traits are expressed over like multiple generations. As far as scientists know, it's random mutation that occurs in the genetic code that gives rise to the expression of new traits. But also, I mean, I got my own theory on this. I think that like there might be an aspect of like organismal need to have some type of adaptation that might lead to like a specific type of like strain on the organism and gene expression, this and that, which might lead to mutations to express said genes. I think there's like a quantum physics aspect to it all. But that's one thing. The second thing is like so first of all, I don't think these animals are really just choosing, like, well, it's just how they say it. I don't think they actually mean that. They're like, these, well, they say it when they talk about evolution. They're like, yeah, this organism adopted this strategy because it's like, is that how it works? Or is it random mutation came about, this strategy emerged, is more successful than all the other strategies, and literally is the only one that survived because there's no sign of any other organism of that species without that trait. It's more like a process of elimination. Like something randomly came about, it survived, everything else died, so every organism in that species has that trait. As far as I understand, like from what I've heard, evolution be described as, I would say that is probably a more accurate descriptor. But that's not even the point I want to get to. What I do want to get to is how they always just assume that every trait has a purpose. As like, and I'll give you humans for example. A simple one is eyesight. Some humans have poor eyesight, and biologists know this because I've seen other ones. I've seen ones with like hogs that have horns that like grow into their own, like they have tusks that grow into their own like skull, and like eventually it lead to like self-termination. It's just that the organisms reproduce before that happens. It's like a lot of traits are not useful. It's just that the organisms are already fit enough to reproduce before all of their useless traits that have maybe came about again with like random mutation or whatnot became I don't know, critical, whatever you want to call it. Um, yeah, so I think there's a lot of traits that maybe are these random mutations, and that's kind of why I wanted to explain that first part, like with like random mutation, how as far as we understand how that goes, but they have no specific use. It's like everybody thinks like, oh look, this dinosaur had a claw like this. It's like it must be doing something. It's like maybe it just came about. Maybe like it really is annoying to the freaking dinosaur to have that claw. Like with like I bet there's things about us we wish were better. Um, Honestly, I'll use humans as an example. Like we develop tools and like clothing and all these like exoskeleton type accessories. And it's like once we started using tools, that became an adaptation that was good enough to allow us to survive. And it really didn't require any more like biological adaptation of like our organism. And so like as long as we can survive with the adaptation of tools, every other gene, including ones that aren't even like useful at all, like they could be like bad, like we have genetic diseases in our species. Like there are people that, like, no offense, but like there are genetic diseases that are terminal, totally like not good, but they're still passed on because we have a general fitness that is enough of a carrier. It can bear the burden of all these useless and even sometimes detrimental genes. It's like that's what's really going on. It's not like every freaking gene has a purpose or every trait has a purpose. It's literally like, are you fit enough to reproduce first and foremost? And then there could be an endless amount of mutations with different colors, different shapes, sizes, as long as your general fitness is enough to bear the burden of all those random mutations, with all the random gene expression, with all the different traits that come about. It's like every trait does not have a purpose, dude. Like, and I think they should look at that, like, honestly, like when they're studying old fossils and stuff, it's like I do not hear them saying that. Every time I watch a documentary, they're like, oh, well, it had this adaptation, which must mean it's like doing this. It's like, that makes no sense. Like, does that mean it's not? I mean, maybe sometimes it's like reasonable. It depends what we're talking about specifically, but a lot of times it's like it's just people, they're just going too far with their minds. Like the scientists are always saying like, oh yeah, like the organism, you know, adopted this strategy to do this. Like I said, it's not a I don't think it's a choice, first of all, like a conscious choice. Like I said, I think it's more like maybe a random mutation occurred so that trait came about, followed by, you know, maybe some hard times where that's the only trait that survived, and all the other organisms, that species without that trait, didn't. So then you just have a whole entire species with that trait. And then second, so that's just kind of, I think, would be a random thing. Like I said, there might be stressors of the individual organisms to maybe develop those traits. Like I said, there might be some quantum physics type stuff where, with the DNA and, gene expression, literally stressing the organism in a certain way to where like the DNA breaks at a certain point and, has a, what are they called? Mine's drawing a blank here. A nucleotide kind of changing at that spot. And yeah, I don't know, there might be something like that going on, but I don't think they choose it consciously. Number one. Two, there's probably a lot of different gene expressions that are completely useless. It's just that the underlying organism is fit enough to carry those genes without it being what do they call that, a deal breaker. Basically, they can still, even if there's useless traits, useless genes, useless gene expressions, all these weird, if they're still fit enough to reproduce and pass on those genes, it don't matter. It can be that organism can be a carrier of thousands and thousands and thousands, millions, even trillions, I don't know, like, of different like traits that are completely useless. And I'm just saying, we can use humans as an example. There are people with bad eyesight. There's a whole bunch of different genetic diseases, but we're still fit enough to reproduce. Look, I hate to say it, but I could be harsh about this. There are certain people that I think, never mind, I don't even want to go that far. Like, there are people out here that are reproducing against all odds. Put it that way. I don't want to be too harsh about it, but yeah, you see what I'm saying, man. It's I just always hear it in these documentaries. It's like, oh yeah, like this organism has this trait, so it must have like they just talk about it in a weird way, dude. Like I said, so number one, well, the main point I want to get at is what I was saying was I don't think every trait has a use, first and foremost. That was the main point I wanted to explain. I was just kind of explaining the way I've heard, the theories of random mutation and whatnot, to explain how, there could be a fit organism with a bunch of different useless traits. They could be a carrier for useless traits, as long as they're fit enough to continue to pass on the genetics. But yeah, so one, every trait does not seem to have a use. You know what I mean? Like, I would just see scientists like, oh well, it has this claw, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it has this little. It's like, so it could just be one of those random excess stupid traits. You know what I mean? Like, there are the specific traits, I think, that are critical for reproduction fitness, like survival long enough to reproduce, pass on traits. I think humans are a good example. Like, there are, and really, it's not just on the individual. Like, humans are like this community type species where, like, we all care for each other, and certain people are inventing things that help other people, like prosthetic limbs, glasses. Like, without the help of other organisms of the species or members of the species, whatever, I don't think a lot of the other organisms that have, no offense, but like poor genetics would survive, So it's like almost an adaptation of the group. But yeah, back to my point. A lot of random genes that are not useful. Number two, I don't think organisms are sitting there like, how should I adapt a new trait? How should I grow an extra limb to, climb up a tree? Like, just don't think that's how it works. But like I said, there might be some like specific stressors that might strain the organism in certain ways to cause maybe a certain mutation in a certain way. I don't know. That's a personal theory of my hypothesis. But we already understand like environmental, factors, and maybe a new trait emerges randomly, or it could be with the, specific stressors like I'm talking about, and then it's a positive adaptation that allows that organism to survive and thrive. And then maybe the environment is harsh enough but there's also the genetics, like Mendel's freaking experiments with, dominant and recessive genes, and so there could still be like, organisms without that adaptation that survive and just breed, and next generation has that trait, stuff like that. But either way, that's the classical understanding of evolution, is trait emerges. We don't know exactly how. We might not understand the microcellular biological processes that bring that about necessarily, but with our theory, it is that random mutation occurs, trait emerges, is useful, survives, is passed on, becomes the main, dominant in the population, and that's it. And it's not like they chose that. It just happened. It was just better. It's a better adaptation through random mutation, or like I said, maybe the whole specific stressor type theory, and then could be a whole bunch of those, and this would kind of negate the whole specific stressor type theory. There could just be a bunch of random mutations that produce a whole bunch of weird traits that are completely useless, but the underlying organism is already fit enough, so all those useless traits get passed on. Like, like I don't know. I keep saying it. It's like these scientists that are like, I don't know. They're supposed to be like the authorities on the subject, but I'm like, damn, y'all keep like not really. I don't know. I just feel like it's not a good way to explain it, because it's giving a lot of laymen like the wrong idea, I feel like. So I'm like, hold on, you should be. I don't know. I just feel like you you do it better justice. So there you go. That's all I want to say. I know it's pretty random of a video here, but I'm pretty sure scientists understand this. They just don't explain it well in those documentaries. Like I said, I don't think it's some novel idea. If it is, then okay, well, holler at your boy. Give me whatever little credit for it, you know, that you think I deserve or whatever. But otherwise, I don't know. It seems pretty obvious to me. So I just figured I'd explain it. And I just always see it as like a pet peeve. It's like it's almost when you see something in a movie, it's like wrong, like physics or something. You're like, no, like that's not how that would work. Like it's like hearing that in these documentaries. I'm like, no, they don't decide to adapt in a certain way. They didn't like. It's not how that works. It's just not. And all these random traits, like they're always trying to come up with like uses for it. It's like, how do you know there's a use at all? Like maybe it was a burden to them, like these tusks that grow into the freaking hog skulls, like, and have a self-terminating function. It's like, I'm pretty sure they're pissed about that. They're not like, yeah, I chose that, you know, I wanted that to happen and it was a useful adaptation. No, it's fucking a burden, dude. And they're just fit enough to reproduce before that happens, you know. Pretty simple concept. So anyway, I think it's very straightforward. I just felt like explaining that. So I know a lot of you know what it is with scientists, they're always like egotistical, and they're like, oh, like that. There's probably people in these documentaries that are like try to justify them saying what they said. It's like, well, I meant it this way. I don't know. I don't care. It's whatever. I'm not very egotistical. But if this is a novel idea, and I don't think it is, but if it is, yeah. What did I just come? What was the one that I just said? I said something like specific stressor theory of evolution. That might be novel. That's my like hypothesis on it all. If there's something to that, like, you know, you can put me in the textbooks and let them know I came up with that. Look, I kind of went to like a local college for a little while, but I just hated the college format. So I'm like a self-educated guy. I watch documentaries. I read books. I learn, you know. I review the scientific literature and, you know, try to comprehend it without being force-fed said knowledge. And, you know, I don't know. I think I got a decent grasp on it, so it's not like I'm just some random Joe Schmo, you know. I've definitely put in some time to understand these things, so, yeah. Alright, well, I got a lot going on around here. It's kind of annoying trying to make videos out here, so I'm gonna leave it at that. That's all I gotta say, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll talk to you later. God bless you. Peace out.